Welcome back to this series of Dark Reading Tech Talks. Terry Sweeney here with Dark Reading, and joining me now is Brianna Leddy, Director of Analysis for Darktrace. Brianna, thank you for doing this today.
Thank you for having me, Terry.
Our topic apparently is ransomware gang rebrands. I can imagine maybe in a year or two we'll be talking about how they're going public or getting venture funding or something. I mean, they're becoming serious businesses, right?
They certainly are. There are some sophisticated groups that we're seeing nowadays.
So let's start with why ransomware gangs are apparently rebranding. What's happening there?
Yeah, so there's a few reasons why we might see ransomware groups rebrand. One of which is just to refresh their tactics, ensure that they are consistently evading the defenses that we are putting in place to combat them. But another major reason is some of the increased government and legal vigilance around ransomware groups and the negative attention that they get in the wake of an attack. For example, we saw this last year with the Darkside ransomware gang, the group behind the Colonial Pipeline attack. Mm-hmm. Following that attack, they had their infrastructure taken down, their cryptocurrency seized, and they went dark for a period. But a few months later, we saw a group called Black Matter emerge, and researchers determined that this was actually the same people behind the Darkside ransomware gang.
So obviously, these ransomware gangs are acting and functioning more like real businesses. The rebranding obviously is one movement, but what other trends are you seeing in the way that ransomware gangs conduct their attacks?
I think everything that we do on the defensive side, ransomware gangs will adapt to get around those defenses. So some of the current trends that we are seeing are attackers using living off the land techniques, abusing legitimate administrative tools and services in order to blend into existing traffic and avoid detection by tools that are looking for explicit signatures or malware. On the other hand, we've also seen groups, move to get around the backups that companies are now using to restore from a ransomware attack. So gangs are now targeting those very backup servers and using double extortion techniques, not only encrypting data, but also exfiltrating it and holding that stolen data for ransom as well. Wow.
So again, like a regular business, they respond to market conditions. They have to remain competitive and innovative. It's a little weird, isn't it?
It is. Especially, I think the Conti ransomware leak gave us some pretty crazy insight into how these gangs are operating and even interviewing almost like a security company would.
So like you, as somebody who's an observer and a tracker of just wave after wave of ransomware incidents, it's a little frustrating that there isn't more enforcement action, or maybe there is that just isn't public. But can you talk a bit about either arrests, enforcement actions, legislation, any government action that might give us a little bit of hope that these threats are being combated effectively?
Yeah, I think we especially started to see an increase in that government action last year because of the number of just high-profile attacks in 2021. For example, the Biden administration started a collaboration with multiple countries, a task force to combat ransomware and determine how to actually take action against these groups. And we have seen some successful arrests as a result of that. One of the most notorious ones was the arrest of several affiliates of the Our Evil ransomware gang this past January. But I think what we've seen with that is, even though we're able to arrest some of the affiliates, some of the people responsible, it's difficult to fully eradicate these groups because they are so widespread, they are so sophisticated. In fact, just this past April, we saw the Happy blog, Our Evil's leak site, all of a sudden redirecting to a new website which led to the fear that they might be back. We still have yet to see exactly what's to come there, but I don't think it's the last that we've heard of this particular gang.
So help us do a little bit of risk management. What should organizations be more concerned about? The big names in cybercrime, like Wizard Spider is one, for example. You've named a couple of others in your comments today. Or is it maybe the lesser known, smaller scale attackers who are looking to make a name for themselves, not to mention a buck? What's your sense there?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think we have to be concerned about both, right? Because as we've been saying, those big names, they have a lot of widespread access. They have the capital to do that research, to come up with new techniques and tools. They're essentially notorious for a good reason. And in today's ransomware landscape, we also have ransomware as a service. So that's allowing even those lower level attackers, any criminal with a little bit of money, to gain access to these more sophisticated techniques. And I think one of the really scary things is those unknown attackers, the ones that we don't even know about yet. That really comes down to the question, how do we protect against what we don't know?
Always a tough one. Let's go out with a question I'm sure you get asked a lot. How can organizations start to tackle novel ransomware attacks? Are there protective measures? Are there mitigations? What can they do, if anything, to prepare for them?
Mm-hmm. There's a number of things, of course, having backups, keeping servers patched, especially those internet facing. But I think with all of these recent attacks, we've really realized that a cohesive approach to ransomware needs to involve a shift from the traditional and the legacy tools that we've been using. These tools are typically defining what we know is good versus what we know is bad. But attackers are getting around that. So we need to not start thinking in terms of good versus bad, but what's normal versus not normal. We can think of it kind of like operating as a digital immune system, exactly as it works in the human body, learning the unique ecosystem and detecting deviations from that normal, which could then indicate the presence of a threat. I really think this is one of the ways forward to actually combating these sophisticated and novel attacks we're seeing today.
Well, ransomware antibodies sounds like a good thing, so we'll leave it there. But thanks for the update on ransomware gangs. I feel a weird combination of calmness and anxiety both. So I thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
We've been talking with Brianna Leddy, Director of Analysis with Darktrace. This has been Terry Sweeney with Dark Reading. Thanks for joining us for this Tech Talk. We'll see you next time.